Well, thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Ridgefield Library. Thank you, audience. As you may know, we have a new Poets Laureate showcase this evening. We've been having a lot of them lately. We've been adding many, many new Poets Laureate in the state of Connecticut, which is great. And word is afoot that we're going to start pursuing Youth Poets Laureate here in the state. So I'm sure we'll eventually be hosting some of them as well. I just wanted to give you a little preview of some folks we have coming up on December, I think it's the 4th, either the 4th or the 5th. Let me see my calendar here. Wednesday, the 4th. Let's see, we have Sitara Nanaguru, David Morse of Storrs Manfield, John Moreau of Guilford, Jamie O'Halloran, yay, she's in the audience tonight, of New Canaan, and Tom Nicotera of Bloomfield. So they will be our December poets. We hope you can join us for that reading as well. We've already hosted many, many Poets Laureate in the program. It's great. We've had, I'm just going to name a few. This is not a complete list. We've had Gabriella Brand, Pat Matola, Faith Vicinanza, Steve Alou, Judith Liebman, Susan Powers, Charmant Influence Little. Let's see, down here, Nazima Hutchings, Nadia Sims, Mark McGuire-Schwartz is here this evening, Vicki Nordland, let's see, and yeah, and then the folks we're adding this evening. So as I said, we'll be hosting more in the future, and it's great. It's a great program that the towns are now doing. They can actually have financial benefits from it, including, and of course, gain cultural status. So if you live in a town that doesn't currently have a poet laureate, please speak to your librarian, speak to your town officials, and get it going. It would be really, or yeah, Peggy Dietz Shea is also in the crowd. She is the president of the council, Connecticut Council of Poets Laureates. So very worthwhile program. Okay, so let me get started. Welcome on this dark night. And I want to introduce our first, first I'll do an overview of our poets. We have Mark McGuire-Schwartz, Virginia Shreve, Steve Straight, Cheryl Panosian, and Ira Joe Fisher. And I'll introduce them each individually. I'll also, by the way, I'll give a very abbreviated bio for each of the poets and then put their full-length bio in the chat so you can check if you missed the name of a publication or want more information about their background, please check there. So we're going to start this evening with Mark McGuire-Schwartz, the newly minted Poet Laureate of Guilford. Mark has published poetry and prose in many journals, including Caduceus, Fairfield Review, Connecticut River Review, Six Sentences, and Connecticut Law Journal. His first chapbook, Loss and Laughs, Love and Fauna, was published in 2009. Mark is the author of a short play, Meeting Arthur Miller, which was produced during the 2004 International Festival of Arts and Letters. He has taught at Housatonic Community College, along with holding other educational posts. So please welcome Mark McGuire-Schwartz.
Hello. When I was young, I had a pet turkey. His name was Sam. We went everywhere together. You have no idea how insensitive people can be to a young boy and his turkey. Thanksgiving taunts all year long. Don't worry, Sam, I would tell him. They're just gobbleheads. And Sam ignored them and forgave them. He was very kind-hearted that way. My father's sisters thought it strange. Get rid of the bird, they tell him. A boy should have friends of his own species. But my father knew that Sam was friends enough for me. One day, Sam and I stood outside a deli and read the menu posted on the door. Oh, they have turkey clubs, Sam said. I'd like to be in one of those. He was so innocent, Sam was. Never acknowledged the brutality that this world can bring. Oh no, Sam, I told him, it's not what you think, not what you think at all. It was shortly after that Sam was sent to the petting zoo. Through the years, I've had other friends, even married, raised 5 children, but I've never had another friend like Sam. Some things you can't replace. This next one is called Impaired. Impaired, my mother mistakenly went to the men's room. We were celebrating. It was New Year's, maybe her last. Impaired by deafness, by drink, and maybe by tired and worn and age. It was too late to stop her. At my wedding, I remember someone telling me my father was pissing in the bushes. Impaired by drink and celebration, perhaps, and not knowing what one does at a wedding officiated by both a rabbi and a priest. I went to look for him, but by then he was off somewhere else. Every day, my mother-in-law says that she has never seen a sky so nice. Perhaps a bit hyperbolic. This particular sky exceeds all others. 90 years and not a sky to match. And this poem, thank you. Yeah, the clap, but thank you. This used to be called, the last word in the title recently was called Gaza, and before that it had been called Syria, and before that I think it was Iraq and then Afghanistan. It's now called Obsessive Compulsive in Lebanon. He showers excessively while the bombs drop, silently repeating his mantra, wash away the war, wash away the war. Now he shampoos for the 5th time as he sings the words aloud, wash away the war, wash away the war. His uncle is missing, and his father shouts through the bathroom door, come out, Ahmed, come out. You're using too much hot water, and soap doesn't grow on trees. Olive oil soap does, sort of, Ahmed thinks, as he contorts himself to clean the farthest reaches of his back. So this poem is called Words Written and Sealed in an Envelope, November 4th, 2024, not to be open till the evening of November 6th, 2024. It says poem, so you know it's a poem. Who knows what's in here? And the winner is, no, that's, words written and sealed. This is not about the Civil War now being fought, in some cases, spouse against spouse, in some places, neighbor shooting neighbor. This was not happening when I wrote this poem on Tuesday. And you probably already know if civil war is happening when I read this on Thursday evening. It is not about the immense celebrations of the first female president-elect, nor about the fact that the presidential gender gap will be balanced if only the next 45 presidents are also women. Nor is it about the oldest president-elect. On Tuesday, I do not know which option will have materialized. And by Thursday, we may all know, or may not. It's not about the plethora of court cases about voting irregularities, nor about those irregularities, nor about the best run and fairest voting ever. It's not about waiting to get all the votes counted, nor about how early it was that the Electoral College victory had become clear. This is not about families moving to Canada, nor about people hiding their computer files and paper files that could be used against them. This is not about the booming heard off in the distance, nor about the grand flashes and vivid colors seen seconds before the noise. It is not about the puzzlement about what is happening. Has the aurora borealis exploded with its greatest force yet, enough to light the early daytime sky? Had a comet or two disobeyed the calculations of astronomers and physicists and actually struck the Earth? Or were those sounds and flashes the bombs that signaled the beginning of the Civil War? Or perhaps just fireworks hailing victory? Perhaps now that the envelope has been opened and the unsealed words are finally being read, enough votes have been counted, tabulated, added up, and explained on boards with maps and population figures by newscasters known for this trick, and on maps with red, blue, and purple states and counties and districts shaped like salamanders. And after enough states had been called and the numbers assigned to those states may have been totaled and colored red or blue, and perhaps by now the numbers are showing clear trends, showing enough to see what has been detected, selected, approved of, and rejected. And some people may have sighed, others may have cried, and some may have lied and be lying still. And some of us may have decided to hide and may already be hiding. And by this morning of Thursday, November 6th, maybe we all know. But this is not about the outcomes of what had been decided. This is about the unusually warm November weather. Such a pleasant indication that climate change may end our existence on this planet. It is about a possum that emerged from between the dunes as I was walking by the beach as the park was closing. Later, I went to see an opera staged at Peabody Museum. A giant prehistoric turtle hung from the beams above the audience, swimming 70 million years ago in its ancient imaginary sea. Not far behind the turtle is a sharp-toothed mosasaurus with its long serpentine tail. This is about the buck I saw that crossed the neighbor's lawn very close to her front door as I drove home. And mostly, this is about the bicycle lock that I intend to buy. My bike has been stolen many times in recent dreams. Maybe a really good lock will stop this from happening. So thank you. Thank you for all for listening. Barbara, thank you for including me in this grand event. And I want to especially thank the millions and millions of supporters of freedom and democracy who skipped voting because they were going to poetry readings instead. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to thank those people. Maybe I want to thank those people. It's always good to go to a poetry meeting. Maybe your timing was bad. So I have one more poem. And I have one more drink of water before the poem. It's called Release the Poems, and that's my dog, Zach. He helped me write it. Because every poem is a poem about freedom before it is too late, because of what they are saying, because the world is the world, and that is not always so good. Because scientists have determined that the basic particle is beauty, because the structure of the world is fractured. Before they start rounding up poets, before it is too late, release the poems. Because one of my uncles says that democracy is shaky and may not last. Because another uncle says there's nothing we can do. Because another uncle says the world is incapable of dealing with climate, because poets are taking themselves off social media, because I am being paranoid, because I know a lot of very nice Republicans, because some percentage of citizens believe certain things, even though those certain things are not nearly the fabric of the universe or of truth or of whatever. Because if certain people believe certain things, then what stops them from believing others? Because people are dying, because there's nothing we can do, because it is cold out and the wind chill is cold and everything is cold, because the ash trees on my block are falling, because jelly is no longer associates with peanut butter, because they are rounding up poets, because they have rounded up Uyghurs, because they have rounded up utopians, because they have rounded up environmentalists, because I am scared to mention the groups they are rounding up, because people have, and this is true, shot at houses in my town that were displaying Black Lives Matter signs, because my Black Lives Matter sign was stolen from my lawn, because the signs that remain on lawns offer frightening messages, because we cannot know who to trust, because the signs are clear, because the bridges are falling, because cheating is now considered okay and honor has been deleted from the rules, because truth no longer matters, because I wake up in the middle of night worried, because there are images I cannot escape. Release the poems, because I am hoping there is hope, though hope is hiding. Because the feeling will just not go away, because this poem has no end. Release the poems, release the poems, release the poems, release the poems. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. As you can see in Mark's bio, the longer bio in the chat, he believes that laughter is a gift to be shared, and he helped us laugh. So thank you, Mark.
Quite well.
And I love the idea that scientists agree the basic particle is beauty. So thank you for that. Okay, next up we have, hold on, I have to open up my bios here. Okay, Virginia Shreve is Collinsville's newly appointed poet laureate. And she has lived in many places, including Minnesota, New Jersey, but for the past few decades, she has made her home in Connecticut. She worked for poets in the schools while in graduate school, and over the years, wrote and edited various publications, including a lot about dogs. Virginia served as the state of Connecticut Beat Poet Laureate from 2020 through 2022. And she had also helped or hosted 2 years of national international Beat Poet festivals here in Connecticut. She has also been hosting the last Sunday readings most months in Collinsville. So if you would, please welcome Virginia Shreve. Yay.
Thank you. And actually, I am the Poet Laureate of Canton. Collinsville is just a little part of Canton. So it's more like Poet Laureate of 9,000 people rather than 2,000 people. So, I mean, come on now. Anyway, my first poem is called In Winter, I Dream of Tomatoes. I think the apple was not the sinful fruit. It is too crisp, too clean, too done with in a bite. It was the tomato, the skin so thin, the barrier between flesh and appetite, between disaster and spill, so tenuous. Seeds catch in our teeth, juices escape tongue and teeth and slide down our chins. We are sticky and unrepentant. Oh, my love, is the yearning always sweeter than the fruit? My next poem is called I Want You to Blame Yourself. And this came in a dream. And I wasn't sure at first if it was talking to me or not. But anyway, it's I want you to blame yourself, but only as much as you should. Bars of moonlight stripe your face like runnels of tears. I want suffering to know your address, but not to move in. I can be as cruel as salt, but not for long. I am tired of the tiny things that leather the soul, the rituals of regret, the rim of cup almost meeting the lips, the squint over steam. Do you wonder if it is enough? When it will be enough? I will tell you. I can be as kind as breath until I cannot. So much depends upon what we choose to remember, what we vow to forget, the myths we tell ourselves, and how you finish this poem. Thank you. This one is called Fly Fishing in Montana in Times After War, for Paul. Give me plain language and a sandwich. I like verbs and nouns with some meat on them. Yellow mustard. The dog can come too if he stays out of the water, stays on the bank, doesn't eat the flies, doesn't roll in the fish. Yeah, every time I bring him, I say, what kind of an idiot takes a dog fishing? Clean lines. You know where the edges are. There is purity in profanity, like the stream you would have heard from your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, if he hadn't had 5 big-eared kids and been raised altar boy Catholic till he was old enough to carry a water-cooled in Patton's army. You imagine he got rid of most of it, waiting to see whether he'd be crossing the Moselle or the Rhine. Which toss saves you? Which puts your butt in foreign ground? These are your wars now. Mountains, jungles, deserts. But sometimes you don't need a war to slice your soul thin and dark and small. It don't matter to the river, the dawn, fish jumping like it was a contest, the line soaring, the bigness of everything. The sky goes on a long ways out here. Space enough for your shadow and your past. Did you think you had to carry it with you? Clean arc of line cuts through morning mist, clears out the smoke up your ass and in your head. God is in the ripples, the rush over rock, bird calls and insect hum. I don't need adjectives, wriggling in a cream sauce, platitudes so truffle-oiled they slide out the bottom of the bun. Give me plain language and a sandwich. The sky and the land blue in twilight, the river, a fish posse sniggering in deep morning. Okay, the damn dog can come too. I'll find the quiet. All you got to do is bring your breath. This one, I really like working with artists at the Canton Gallery on the Green. They do every other year a word art series where you work with a graphic artist. And in this one, a friend of mine who's a photographer had done a photograph that was all kind of fragmented and shattered, a face but very shattered. So it kind of made up a face, but not clearly. So I, to go along with that, used a lot of fragments of poems or very small poems to give the same idea of fragments with the space around them, which is something that is interesting to me, the space around things. It's called Existential Side Eye. 1. Still life at 4 in the afternoon. I am eating figs, darkly jeweled, squat little kings. The sweetness clots on my tongue, grit on my teeth. I think of sometimes one thing, sometimes another. 2. You seldom meet old lovers on the Appalachian Trail. Decades passed and on another continent, you shared ouzo in a bed. Later, in that other country, you hoped for red wine with your baguette and some kind of a vow. 3. He asked if we had met before. In Budapest, the Romanian spoke to me in French. I spoke to him in English. We spent the afternoon mostly not understanding each other. But the Danube glittered as if remembering when waltzing was a thing. We drank bitter coffee from the sandwich vendor with metal teeth and ignored the Russian barges. We said we'd write. 4. My mother died when I was born, they said. Sometimes I think she refused to go. Why else would I buy blue eyeshadow? Why else would I wear it? 5. Butterfly gods. How many butterflies did it take to sink the Titanic? Far fewer, I think, to sink us. A twitch of dragonfly gossamer, perhaps. The terrible responsibility of movement. 6, and the owl. Moonlight pours a lap of pearls, albino silk, spilt moon milk awaiting the raspy tongues of spectral cats. 7. Sisyphus of the lovelorn. Over and over again, like a wheel, like a wheel, like a wheel, it always turns out the same. Our razored breath, our hearts like careful fists. 8. People used to talk behind their hands. Now they are as likely to carve their words in your flesh. The cat walks into the room like curling paint. 9. As in oceanography, memory. The tides come in, bringing the pretty and the dead. The tides go out, taking some of what they brought. Some they did not. 10. Just so you know, I have never been a good swimmer, but on the other hand, I am very, very hard to drown. Thank you.
That was wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you. Can you turn off I'm not sure how to do the muting here, so I
Oh,
don't, because my
uh,
dogs may start yelling at any
oh,
point.
I'll mute you now. Are you okay? Goodbye. Oh, I get such a sense of power. That was wonderful. Virginia, just really great lines and wonderful poems. I want suffering to know your address, but not to move in. That's one of my favorites. So great, great, great poems. So thank you. And very well read. By the way, everyone, if you hear a line that snags your attention or an image that really sparks your imagination, please feel free to put a note in the chat. We try to share them with the poets if we remember to record or copy them before we sign off. So it's nice to have some feedback because they don't hear you as they're reading. It's not like a live reading, which is the gasp in the audience is always telltale sign that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so next we have another wonderful poet. Steve Straight, the new poet laureate of South Windsor, is professor emeritus of English for Manchester Community College, where he directed the poetry program and taught for 30 years. Steve's books include Affirmation, which was recently awarded the 2003 William Meredith Award for Poetry, a wonderful prize, and the Almanac, and third, The Water Carrier, a finalist for the Connecticut Book Award. So please, if you would, welcome Steve.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Barb, for inviting me and setting this all up. It's not quite in the picture, but I figured I would show my shirt, which has just an author, and underneath it, it says, "Keep on scribbling." And my opinion is that's all we have. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to start off with a poem about my two grandfathers, and it's based on two photographs. The first was my father's father, and then the second half is my mother's father. It's called Inheritance. 1/4 of my genome sits on a tractor with a kind of fez on his head cocked with half a grin. He is 91, about to start the day's chores. I know he had trouble seeing the camera and couldn't have heard the cheese clearly, but there's no escaping the twinkle, no escaping the strong liver-spotted hands that signify a life of milking cows and clearing fields of stones and making do. Once he came to our house, and my father warned him about petting the cat. Still, he couldn't resist, and at the first stroke, the cat striped his hand. I remember the look on his face, neither shocked nor annoyed, the same half grin as on the tractor. Life is interesting. It has been worth it to live this long. Even my own blood intrigues me. Another 1/4 of my genome sits on a wooden bench between his house and the lake in Pennsylvania. He is 66, wearing only tropical print swim trunks, reading a book called Dreams. With his round belly, and bald head and big toothy smile. He is the Buddha on vacation. 25 years earlier in seminary, blowing perhaps too hard in the coals of inquiry, stressed by money woes with 3 daughters at home and headmaster of a failing school, he snapped into a manic state and came to believe he was Jesus. It took the fire hose of early shock therapy to reduce him to the mellow soul I knew. In the photograph, he is beaming at me. The look on his face says, yes, there is all that, or was, but now there is this. Now there is you. Next is a poem that basically says you can write a poem about anything. And there's a mention of Marcel Duchamp in the middle of the poem. Duchamp was a famous modernist, and at a show in 1917, his work of art was an upside-down urinal, which he signed R. Mutt for some reason. Anyway, Marcel Duchamp shows up in the poem. And this is called Urinal. To illustrate the concept of personal space, I offered my class the example of the men's room urinal row. No man, I said, seeing a single man standing at one, would take either spot right next to him. The women in the class laughed, the men nodded. The next week, a student said he would miss an important class to appear in court because of your class. To test your theory, he said, when I was in a bar in Westerly last Friday night, I saw one guy alone in the middle of the row and took the urinal to his right. He pulled a knife on me and still had it to my throat when the police came, still cursing me and exclaiming his hetero-ness. The rich history of urinals, from ancient troughs to a patent in the 1860s, from French pissoirs on city streets to what Marcel Duchamp called fountain, upside down and signed R. Mutt into art history, includes my father discovering in Haiti urinals filled with ice. He tried to melt as much as he could, he told me, as if dissolving some of Haiti's many ills. Once in a pub in Galway, as I stood before a 10-foot marble trough, 2 men came in and took their places on either side of me. I did not pull a knife on either one of them, partly because I had no knife, but mostly because one was the US Poet Laureate, Robert Hass, and the other the Nobel laureate, Czesław Miłosz. No words were exchanged, but we seemed to be writing a poem by committee, one we would call Stream. I'll have you know my wife is snapping her fingers in the background. This is a poem I like to trot out for, I guess it's for poets, really. It's a poem called Diction, and in this case, I mean word choice. And it comes with a little head note. The poet named Ralph Nazareth once gave a workshop at my school, and he said, I never forgot it, a poem should have only 1 or 2 interesting words, which is quite a concept. So this is called Diction. Once a student of mine used the word luminous in a poem, and I said, well, there's your luminous poem. You can only use that once in your life, so is this your luminous poem? She frowned. I was speaking from experience, having written my plethora poem, my hyperspace poem, my somnambulance poem, not even thinking how I had sealed their fates, not to mention my good friends Proffered, Keenheen, and Concentricity, all now permanently on the shelf. These insights, of course, come from myriad shimmering epiphanies, 3 words, incidentally, that make an official banned from poetry list I saw online. The tiger trap of cliche, too, enemy of every poet, woven by words like heart and forever and love, claims many victims, especially young poets eager to gush about their halcyon days. Perhaps it is more about individual words than combinations, for even though soul is rightly banned, no human could complain about a soul train. Personally, I'm waiting for just the right place for a numinous, a word so beautiful and sound and meaning, it should be used by every poet once. But I may have to wait for the day when something mysterious is revealed to me, when sacred or divine just won't be enough. I'm going to read 3 more, and they are kind of, I guess they reflect my response to the state of the world today, especially today. And these are from Affirmation. First one is called Telling the Bees. And it comes with a little head note. Traditionally, if there is a death in the family or some other sad event, bees in hives are informed by their keepers, in part to keep something worse from happening. After I wrote the poem, Queen Elizabeth died, and it got out that her beekeeper had gone down to tell her bees that the queen had died, which was fascinating to me. So this is Telling the Bees. In my vented full body suit with helmet and veil, gaiters covering my ankles, long goatskin gloves, I approach the hive. Some say this should be done at midnight, but I have come in early morning, a light dew on the grass and mist rising off the long river in the valley below. I drape the hive with black crepe, then knock gently once to tell them I have come. I listen to their electric buzz. How to tell them how much trouble we are in, how close we are to ruin, how very much we need their help. In a little rhyme, perhaps, as is tradition. The earth still spins, little bees, but we dread what lies ahead. Save yourselves and save us, please, before our global hive is dead. Bees know the world is round, what zero is, how to dance the angle of the sun even when it's on the other side of the world, how to make food that lasts for thousands of years. I, on the other hand, don't know anything. Exhausted by the smoke of doubt and fear, I long instead to be stung again by wonder, by joy. My wife and I took the world's smallest plane once from Toronto to Hartford, and I ended up in the special seat, seat 1A. This is seat 1A. Seat 1A on the Beechcraft 1900D from Toronto to Hartford is a serious seat, I realize, when the tall, thin co-pilot suddenly leans down from the low cabin ceiling into my face just before takeoff. And over the fever of sound from the warming twin turboprops, asks if I am prepared in the event of an emergency to save all 18 passengers, 9 on each side, by pushing this red button and releasing this rounded lever up, or was it down? He monkeys his way into his seat up front and begins to flip indecipherable switches almost absent-mindedly, the roar shut out by his huge headphones. But I am so sobered by my charge that I see I am also what stands between the exposed, now deaf pilots and some crazy lurching down the aisle. My wife in 1B has a bad elbow and may not be much help. But then I think, aren't we all in seat 1A now, having received our instructions, acknowledged the stakes, sized up our fellow passengers, and vowed in any event to save all we can? Thank you all. I'm going to close with Vincent. We feed chipmunks at our house. We have lots of them because we have stone walls. And every once in a while you get a chipmunk with a distinguishing feature that earns it a name. And this is Vincent. And it ends with pretty much my philosophy of life and what we all should be doing now. Vincent, the one-eared chipmunk I had fed so many times last year from my hand, so close I could study the tumid wound where his left ear had been, The sucking flies stuck to his striped back, the tiny toenails manicured by rocks, did not return this year. And I imagined all the calamities that chipmunk flesh is heir to, the silent dive of the red-shouldered hawk, the neighbor's wily calico, the fox whose baby squeal electrifies the night, and even plain old age, which is never far off for a chipmunk. And I blamed myself for taming him to the point he trusted this indentation in the big stone atop the wall, that despite his palpitating heart, he might have let down his fidgety guard because of our daily routine. And so now, when he does appear, 3 weeks late, ear hole now healed, and clambers over the rocks and into my hand, all 4 feet, even pausing to eat one of the black seeds as I hold him aloft. What choice do I have but to stop, breathe deeply in the palm of the present, to shuck what isn't and savor what is? Thank you all.
Excellent, Steve. Just beautiful. That last Vincent tribute was just gorgeous. It's interesting what you said about a poem should only have 1 or 2 interesting words. I think it was Philip Levine who had said something like no words are noticed. So yeah, you're right. I mean, numinous is waiting to appear. So thank you very much. Beautiful poems. Next we have Cheryl Panosian, Danbury's inaugural Poet Laureate. Cheryl Panosian is a poet and licensed psychotherapist whose work has appeared in Another Chicago Magazine, Bard Papers, the New School Chapbook series, and the Underwood Review. She is the one-time co-host of the longest-running weekly poetry program in Connecticut, the Wednesday Night Poetry Series. Her poetry builds on her Armenian heritage and reflections on family and social issues. So please welcome Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you. This first poem is written from a map in a book that contains some information about my paternal grandfather, whom I never met. And the title is In Search of Amarjan. A red dotted line drawn in pen on this flat map marks your step from Yerevan to Van. The dates 1915, 1916 hug the path like bookends. Lesk village, a resting place east of Lake Van, and a red dotted line stretches from Van to Bakuba. Somewhere along that path your 2 children died. Your wife's belly stretched with Sirvat, born in Baghdad. Her memory buried in desert sands with your Yavrams. Their names lost in arid winds, blown off this red dotted line, a remnant of your journey. I sift through my genes like sand, searching for stories passed on to me like my Vanatsi eyes, nose, and steadfastness. But this map ends on the drawn-in capital star of Baghdad, and no one I know has been able to tell me your story. Anatolia, I carry you on my olive skin, around my face in the square of my jaw. In my hazel eyes you stare back at me, unfading birthmark. Anatolia, you are my chartreuse silk scarf, Araxi brought through continents from Istanbul. You cover my dark curls from the cold of northern nights. Like woven rugs, you cushion my step in a hardened world. Anatolia, land without borders, Aegean, black, Caspian, Mediterranean seas surround your peaks and plains. I carry you, more precious than gems, your golden threads stitching me together, east to west, Ararat to Ankara, Baku to Bosporus, Vanatsi to Western woman. This is a piece from an exhibit in a museum in Philadelphia and it's sort of a work in progress. Crimson threads. Carpet or gorg, double knot sheep's wool, fabric of my ancestors, intimate designs, patterned stories, colors speak to heritage, crimson dye, indelible lines, trace the outlines, the strings stretch, heart to weaver's soul, memoir of inheritance, now hang alone, faded artifacts, Armenian distinct from Asian, separate from Persian, differently detailed from Iranian, its own record, voices of artisans, more probably female, Achik or Ken, conjure them, spirits in labor, longingly I summon them. So kind of changing themes, I lost my dad to cancer. In the process of him passing years ago, I did quite a lot of writing. And this is one of the first poems I wrote after his diagnosis. In an alphabet of acronyms, I find your illness. 1, diagnosis. NSCLC, not small cell, but non-small cell. 4.9 centimeter mass, primary site, that tickled your upper right lung to a silent cough, heard in a silent X-ray, bronchoscopy into the world of oncology, too painful to pronounce like second opinions, too painful to hear again. The prognosis, the retelling omitted like salt in a hypertensive stew. When zeros should follow all letters, yours read T3 or 4, N2, M1. Simple words like advanced, we don't mention. Your liver massively involved, an organ of multiple shaded dots, abnormalities block clear view. Blood work, a roadmap of poor prognosis, of medians spoken in months, years spoken as miracles. So I pray behind shut eyes. 2, planting. The surgeon who for comic relief called himself a plumber placed catheport near right clavicle, implanted under the skin, a round portal to an open vein, pierced like body parts of pleasure-seeking punks, but you hate pain or inconvenience of any kind, so I pour over prognosis again. 3, like water. Taxol and carboplatin swim through veins. You watch the first drips from hospital bed and pray to Advats who hears you in silent Armenian. 4, like acid. The cocktail of toxic soup burns cells inside of you. Home now. My mother, your wife of 44 years, and I dote over you, feed you with well-chosen words of hope. Your sons talk of work and remodeling. Friends call, visit, and pray in the space of unsaid words. You eat well. Drugs block the nausea and vomiting, but your foot balloons like horn pouts we mocked as we fished off rocks at the Cape years ago. Bad cells broken, flood blood, and the gout mushrooms. This now a good sign tells us it's working. 5, waiting. In the absence of knowing, we hope the CEA will drop, the RBC will rise, and you'll be well again. And you remember exploits in the Navy and Army and before, and retell stories heard before as if they are now gold. And we listen more closely, imprint them in our hearts. This next one is also, we did a lot of fishing, we did a lot of camping. So this is inspired by that. Small eyes for comfort. Plump night crawlers entwine like chow mein noodles packed tight in Chinese-style cardboard takeout box. Slimy bodies long, so we slice them in half. one half between my fingertips and yours. We wrestle the worm onto hook, fresh bait for flounder and tautog. I wince at the bloodstains left on the rocks, marvel at your matter-of-fact act, wonder if they feel the slice. You assure me it's okay and not considered animal torture. There is no pain. But I wondered about the blood and the guts that oozed from each half. They said, in the moments of intravenous morphine, that you felt no pain. You were silent, so I couldn't tell. But I heard your breath labor, gurgle like a coffee pot. And when I saw the foam bubble over your lips again, I wondered about the pain. So kind of moving to something else, but similar. This piece I wrote very recently, and it's meditation on loss. Preoccupations, musings, envelope moments, morning swims to soothe. Stroke forward, push back my soul, reclaim my focus. Sit in dark silence, alone fight off images, conjure company. Text, delete, refrain, hold tight, rigid emptiness, come loyal partner. Wrestle, eerie ghosts banging on subconscious walls, comfort in collapse. Weary, slow demise, soon acrid hope disappears, abandoned by death. Quiet afterward, embrace lonesome solitude, adopt orphanhood. And kind of segueing to something different, this is untitled. Rocked you well into the night, rocked myself to slumber, you still fidgeting, sleep only against me, my chest. You could not let go, as if umbilical cords still tethered you to me. My heart, the metronome for your sleep. Tonight I watch you amble around the mall. 3 friends stroll by your side. I sit centered with my invisible line. I do like to write about nature. Nature sort of soothes me when I'm not always feeling the best. This piece is Fragile Sign of Spring. Vibrant yellow petal, you hug spindle of a branch. Survive an April snow. Near neon glow into unrelenting winter gray. A border bush, sometimes left wild. Branches bend crisscross into a thicket, a young bird's protection. You beckon the sun from the mask she's worn. Steer us past what is left dark inside. And finally, and I didn't intend this, but this is called Fragile Gifts, Fragile Sign of Spring. Didn't intend that, but I want to thank you for inviting me, and I'm, incredibly honored to be in this role, and hope, that I can bring poetry to my community. So this last one is Fragile Gifts. Orchids, exotic flowers, potted in a dry mulch, a pot of stuff nourishes slender stems, delicate as their petals, a mirrored symmetry. Unique flowers quickly fade and fall away, go dormant. Remaining leaves require curious attention, not too much doting and fussing through a dormant winter. Contemplation in the midst of caretaking. Did the giver of this orchid understand the requirement? Delicate repotting into just one size up. Silvery white aerial roots intertwine, conforming to pot size. Careful not to overwater, adopting the ice cube method. Did the giver of this orchid know I'd consider the flower as more than just a plant? After the last petal dropped, I contemplate its survival. Would I have what it takes to nurture this precious gift, requiring particular attention? Would I give up on the commitment to an unknown future with no guarantee of growth? Did the giver of this orchid know that I am a caretaker by nature, painstakingly stubborn, not prone to surrender.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So wonderful to have you next door in Danbury as poet laureate. We should you and Ira Joe should definitely do some mixing and matching on some upcoming events. So by the way, I loved the elegies to your father. Beautiful, beautiful series of poems. Okay, finally for tonight, we have the Poet Laureate of Ridgefield, second Poet Laureate of Ridgefield. Ira Joe Fisher's poetry has appeared widely, including in Poetry New York, the New York Quarterly, the New Hampshire Review, and the anthology Confrontation. He is the author of 3 poetry collections and a volume of essays, which you'll see all the titles in the bio in the chat, and has taught poetry and creative writing at New England College, UConn, Stanford, Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, and Founders Hall in Ridgefield. Ira is a member of SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity. He performed in the long-running musical The Fantastics and has appeared in film, daytime TV drama, and as a weather reporter on CBS Early Show. So please welcome Ira Joe Fisher.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you, poets, and what a wonderful evening. Thank you, Cheryl and Virginia and Mark. Lucy, thank you for arranging this, and Barb, of course. My gratitude and love for you continues. My goodness. And Steve, this is just amazing. I am working right now on a poem. It's not ready yet to be shared, but you're not going to believe this. It's called The Numinous Urinal. Okay. Gosh, I missed the live audience. We get the reaction. I'll begin with a short poem. Usually I save this for later because I read some free verse poems, and then I always say, I get a sense from the audience you're saying, would it kill you to rhyme one? So I'm going to begin with a rhyming poem that is titled Quite Close. Horizon stars and fireflies never stray far from earth. The moon-blued night of darkened arms bears silver light in birth above the hill-bound trees, to float and flit and dot the dark with bubbles that won't burst. In keeping close, the stars and flies are practiced and well-versed and feel quite close to me. Many of us here know the joy of seeing our book on the shelf of a bookstore. I love seeing my book here on Books on the Common bookshelves. And this poem is about it being on the shelf and a confession I make about going there. The title of the poem is Book Care. I saunter through the bookstore door to visit my book on the bookstore shelf. There it sits, small and green. There it sits, right in between Eliot and Robert Frost. I go for a visit quite often, I do, to stand that little book straight between Rob and Thomas, to heighten any promise my sweet book might have. I'll not let the little volume lean or grow dusty and musty or droop, but I have a bit of a concern that it's home for which I yearn and dream and sigh and pray. My book's been there long enough to know Eliot and Frost by first name. I trust it shows great courtesy, so if in my visit I were to see my book chatting with Tom and Rob. It looks, I fear, a little thin, and its cover is beginning to curl. Can't they hold the humid air between a sweat and a frigid air to keep the poems comfy? I am impressed and proud of the company. Tom and Rob are solid and thick, hard-backed, hard-nosed, hard-souled, well-told, so bold, pure gold. They don't sport a single curl. My small book is young and frail, growing in the womb of my mind. It doesn't know how to be out in the world now that it's free and on its rhyming, climbing own. I wish my tome would find a nice home and leave the bookstore shelf. Oh, perhaps the cottage of a pretty wife enchanted by literary life, sipping tea in the prosodic eve. Her hubby would smile through pipe smoke at the sight of her reading my words. She'd sigh and raise her gaze to the ceiling through the haze or out the lilac window. And they'd have a pup, brown and snoring and lying at her feet, a pup whose sleep would cease when the wife responds to the trees and meadows and ponds, sitting, waiting in my leafy pages. I turn from the ministrations to the clerk who pipes, "May I help you?" and drop my eyes to the table, displaying children's books and games for playing and pictures and puzzles, all selling well. Just looking, I lie, for adding a thanks. But I want to say, to wring my hands and plead, please, 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 for the love of Cummings, seize my book and whisk it up front, to stand displayed and inviting, beside the CD, chanting enchantment out of your bookstore amplifier to inspire someone to be the buyer of my humble little book. Take the delicate thing, hold it up, let the light play on its deep green front, and show how it sits with grace in the hand, in the eye, and heart place, where lyrics lift and roll and sing. But my time with my book on the bookstore shelf comes to a book end. And out I go from the retailing store, leaving behind all the stories and lore. And I think I hear my little book cry. There is a road that is near Ridgefield, and I relocated it for the sake of this really new poem. And it kind of puts me in the mood of, well, what's the mood of about half of the country today, after yesterday. It's an ominous poem, and it's called Swamp and a Dead Forest. Against the failing green of summer and the gold of falling autumn stand long unleafed tree ghosts on both sides of a New England road. The just trunks of trees are tall, but now whitened the color of death, which visited and stole years ago the force in root, the joy in leaf, sunspark, shade, and the crackle whoosh the wind wrote on its traveling tablet of wayside tales. The swamp, too, is fetid and stilled and offers no clearness or quench. The hills surrounding above are kingly. They ignore the gravity of the soddened, saddened scene below. This is a strange thing that happened while I was driving my automobile one recent evening. Well, let the poem tell the story. The title of it is What? In the autumn dark, an autumn spark sparked a tiny sight at my eye's height. It began as a leaf, tumbling, twirling, brief. Then of a sudden a dot, a glow like a June firefly, to sow the night with a light calm, a soft light, a light healing balm. I think a lot about fireflies. I think they're so cute. I have, as Barb graciously mentioned, a book coming out before the holidays, and it is a collection of poems, and the title of which is The Birth of Snow, and this is the title poem. A spark, small as the point of a pin, shines soft in a white cloud high above building, village, and farm. Then a water drop wraps the shining spark in cold and ice. The Arctic wind weaves that spark with more sparks in the growing cloud, dark and descending with winter's weight. Other winds flee the pole where shadows are blue and sun's a stranger. The whistling squalls brush the sea-big lakes and draft empires of drops to freeze infinite sparks, to chills, to glints, and those sparks, small as the points of pins, grow in night moans to icy white and begin their tumble as snow. I'll go back to childhood for thank you, bless you, for this memory, a narrative poem. It's entitled A Storm and an Old Coop. I know many people pronounce the word coupe. I'm not that fancy, so I'm calling this A Storm and an Old Coop. The night glows gold along the clouds' torn edges. A stilled electric smell cries an old scene from my mind. I am a boy in summer. I hunch on the fuzzy shelf under the rear window of an old coupe belonging to a man named Newton. Quiet lightning winks in the quiet night, saving thunder for that sweet moment of wind and raging rain. Night glowers through the window of the auto, swaying on the road through the Anvil Hills. The man's name is Newton, and it is he who drives. My mother rides passenger. They ignore the charred, conspiring sky and gossip about the old grocery where they work. The butcher, Ernie, smiling from the middle of his blue-veined face. Old Odd Tom, the owner, grinding peanuts and eating the butter to hide the sting in his breath. And Luella, punching the cash register with her one good hand, the other chewed down to a finger and a thumb during the war by a canning machine in a factory now 5 years closed. The dashboard dusts a feeble amber light on them and their talk of waiting on villagers and farmers who wear stained clothes, buy margarine, call it oleo, and tuck their beer behind the sacks of potatoes. I bump small behind my mother and the man named Newton, a hiding spy on the talk of two who are years beyond wonder of a summer storm. I marvel at the night. I count its thuds. I flatten my palm on the window, studding with rain. The storm commits now to storming. Lightning paints on the back of my mind. I turn to the front from my window shelf perch, and insane rain yellows in the headlights. Two winds wrestle for the coupe. The wind it wakes in speeding, and the wind the storm blows across its path. I sigh a sigh that asks how this storm could not pull their minds away from a sagging store and its creaking floor beneath scarred linoleum. I curl and shiver and listen on the hard, scratching shelf behind my mother and a man named Newton, whose talk of the people falls below the ranting, raging storm, snarling and spitting and demanding like a beheading king to be noticed, to be feared by two peasants and a servant boy, as it blusters and swears outside the rear window of an old coupe. And now I sit, gray as the tree-poached sky, no nearer knowing, sniffing the air, peering neck bent over the top of the house, hoping this night might rain. We're in that time of year where the darkness arrives earlier. Many people complain about it. I don't. I really like it. I love night and its coziness, just like I love snow piling in drifts. Whenever I say that, people say, yeah, but what about folks that'll slip on the sidewalk or scratch their car into a tree? They're not wishing for that to happen, for God's sakes. I just want a nice pile of snow that sparkles in the sun. That's all. That's all. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. Forgive me. Back to the poem called Growing Late. The light can scarcely be called day, not sparkle nor glow. It's more gray, like the weary work of a star filling in for some star afar, taking leave, shirking his duty, shunning the morning and beauty, neglecting August golden rod, tiger lilies, and sodden sod. Rain falls on this day in summer, a sad and bashful newcomer, wan hope for an invitation for gift. Ooh, this precipitation. Quite cool enough to threaten frost, and like the sun, the season lost. To starlight dimmed and diminished, to summer, to morning, finished. That was in my book, The Creek at the End of the Lawns. I'm going to be a little sacrilegious here. I am going to, well, challenge the church. Aren't I brave? This is a poem called Do You Demand Praise? Do you demand praise? Well, I suppose you do, from some psalm. But the man as flesh as I orders me to praise you. And I do. In his words, not mine. In his church, not mine. I hear the trees susurrating nights and days in the wolf-wise wind, gathering soul dust on its never-resting rounds. That is where I hear praise, or wish to offer it, to the wind, to the trees, to the tumbling clouds living twice in the orbiting sky and the juddering pond. Praise as mystery, as secret, offered as hope, not fact. Will you accept that praise? Will you look upon me in patience, in knowing I am finished with asking, I am working on accepting your distance, my place under trees in clover breeze, juggling light like laughter? We're nearing the end, I promise. This is a thank you. This is a poem called A Moving Weight. You know, you have an argument and then you slam the door and you go out into the night. I've never done that, but I often had hoped I could. This is called A Moving Weight. I stomped down the alley tonight in a jacket a little light for this cooled night the days become. April day dies to April dark. I stew and storm on a mad lark, amazed how the stars stay with me. My anger charts a fuming mile, the moon is missing, and all the while I glare and I curse and I pout. The moon silvered lovely last night on the wall of my bedroom, bright. Dare I think the moon looked for me? These are really serious times, and I'm feeling differently today than I thought I would feel before yesterday. I was wrong. There is an abbreviation called CO. I was in the military, and CO meant commanding officer. To civilians, CO means conscientious objector, and it's that latter application for this poem of mine. It's my penultimate poem. I love that word. So we only have one more, and the last one is brief, I promise. CO. Mr. Government, do you still hold a fading thought that war, that killing, that sending them to fight is a sin? Oh, you still plan war, you start war, you rage, you still fight, you still kill. But do you hold a thought, a fading thought, that it is a sin? I only ask because you still call war's objector conscientious. And appropriately, this last poem is entitled, and again, thank you for listening, but thank you also for opening your hearts and your minds to poetry. I think on this day after the 5th of November that there is a real hope in poetry, and I'm living in that hope. I'm living in that hope. This is a poem called A Finish. The day is so sunny and clear, the air looks like it could crack and fall into small pieces that would still sparkle in what became the end of the world. I love poetry, and I love you for loving poetry, and I'm honored to be in your company. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira Joe. Always wonderful to hear your work.
Bless you.
I love the first one especially, I have to say. And I'll look for that little green one between frost.
It was still there, but it's for sale, Barb. I don't want to put any pressure on you, but you can take it home with you.
There you go. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I'm with you, Ira Joe. We need poetry right now. And yeah, so join us again next month. And please check into these wonderful poets' books. I have made myself a list of things to order from my local independent bookstore where Ira Joe's book also is waiting. So thank you. And Lucy, thank you so much. Thank you, Ridgefield Library. And
Thank you, Barb.
I hope you all come back.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb.
Take care. Oh, thank you, everyone. And thank you, poets, especially.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb, and all. Thank
Yeah.